Before we begin with turn 2, one small correction. In turn 1, Dornier's 17s attacked and destroyed the 10th New Zealander Infantry Brigade, and that was worth 1 victory point, but I forgot to credit it. So now we do, and we start this turn with 7 victory points. And we're all set to begin turn number 2. And the first phase is the Flieger Corps 11 staff points phase, and we roll 1d6 to gain Flieger Corps points, and in the first turn it was just 1, and we can't afford to roll low again. So we roll 1d6, and this time it's a 6, and we mark the 6 points accordingly on the track. Now to the German intelligence phase. We can spend a Flieger Corps point to find out, or try to find out, what the Allies have in any of their zones, or the reserve display. Because it is most likely that we will be dropping some of our paratroops in the area of Prison Valley, we will make an attempt at finding out what the Allies have at Malemi Airfield. So we have to roll 1d6, and we need a 1 to 3. So we spend one of our Flieger Corps points, and the roll is a 2. So let's see what the Allies have. And the Allies have King George there, an anti-aircraft unit, an artillery unit, and the RAF unit also. So a very interesting assortment of units there. Can our boys get to that space in this turn? That is a tough proposition. The RAF unit, when it appears, it fires instantly at any German air unit there. There's no German air unit present, so the RAF unit goes back to the Allied reserve box. And King George, once he is revealed, he remains on the map until the end of the next combat phase or counterattack phase, whatever comes first. So we won't make more intelligence checks, and we go to the next phase. German refit phase, and we can spend 1 Flieger Corps point to initiate a refit. We don't have any ground units that have been reduced. We have a Luftwaffe unit, and if we spend one of our Flieger Corps points, we can flip it to full strength, and we will do so. So the Junkers 88 is at full strength, and now we have 4 Flieger Corps points left. Now we go to the next phase, the German staging phase. In this turn, we want to drop the Sturm Regiment in Prison Valley, and they would have the objectives of capturing Malemi and Malemi Airfield, as well as Canea and also Suda. So we're going to send our Luftwaffe to raise some hell in those places. So we will assign our air forces to concentrate mostly on the Canea sector, and the rest will be deployed to conduct Allied morale attacks and Royal Navy attacks. And our airborne forces are going to also suffer some adjustments here. We're going to add 3 more units, 2 of them support units, to the Sturm Regiment, and we are going to take the 3 transports we assigned to Retimo sector, and we will assign to the new units. So we are going to drop a total of 8 units. Remember that the Lehr air transport unit can transport 2. We're going to drop 8 airborne units in the Canea sector. Now to the next phase, the German tactical movement phase, but we don't have any ground units on Crete, so we skip this phase. The German strategic air attack phase, and now we conduct our Allied morale and Royal Navy attacks. We have 2 Stukas attacking Allied morale with a strategic combat factor of 3 each, so we roll 2d6, and we need 3s or less. And we keep stretching our luck. A 1 and a 2. 2 hits. And the Allied command index is reduced now to 10. Each of these attacking bomber units has a strategic combat factor of 2, which is the leftmost combat factor. So we roll 1d6 for each, and they need 2 or less to hit. Only the middle Dornier 17 unit hits, and the Savoia Marchetti rolled a 6, so it receives a hit from anti-aircraft fire. And because it was reduced, our victory point score goes down to 6. However, the middle Dornier did score a hit. The Royal Navy index is reduced to 6. And we roll a die on the naval attack outcome table. And the result is a 5, a cruiser sunk, and we gain 2 victory points. Increasing the victory point score now to 8. And now to the next phase, the German tactical air movement phase. And we move German air units to the zones in their assigned sectors, and also transports and transported ground units. And we have 4 fighter and 7 bomber units assigned to Canea sector. Now we move the transports with their passengers to Canea sector. And here we have the air transports. Let's take a closer look. The bulk of our paratroops are going to Prison Valley, and we can see there 1 Junkers 88 attacking the British units there. But also we see that Stukas are attacking the town of Malemi, and there is a transport about to drop its paratroopers there, as well as Heinkel 111 attacking Malemi airfield, and 2 paratroop units also being dropped there. In addition, there are Stuka attacks on Canea and also Suda ports. And finally, there is an airstrike by Junkers 88s against whatever the Allies have in the White Mountains. Now to the next phase, German amphibious movement phase. We don't have any units assigned to amphibious landings, so we skip this phase. To the Allied reveal phase, and we reveal all Allied units in all zones containing German ground or air units. And the only 2 units that are revealed are the anti-aircraft company in the White Mountains, kind of a nasty surprise, and New Zealand, the 21st New Zealander Battalion at Malemi town. All the other units where we have ground and air units had already been revealed. Now to the next phase. It's the Allied anti-aircraft phase. And we roll 1d6 for each anti-aircraft unit firing. So the anti-aircraft unit in the White Mountains will fire at the Junkers 88, and it needs 2 or less to hit. We roll 1d6, a 5, and it misses. And the next unit to fire is an anti-aircraft unit at Malemi airfield with a strength of 1. So it needs a 1 to hit. But the roll is a 4, and it also misses. Now we go on to the next phase, German tactical air attack phase, and now we execute combat for all our air units against Allied ground units in zones where our air units are. And we use our tactical combat factor of 4, so we need 4 or less We roll 1d6, and the roll is a 1. And the anti-aircraft unit is destroyed. And the Junkers 88 and Me-109 and Me-110 return to base. And now we resolve the air attack of the Junkers 88 against the British unit in Prison Valley, and we need 4 or less. The roll is a 5, so that's a miss, and the Junkers 88 flies back to its base. Now we resolve the attack of the Heinkel 111 on Malemi Airfield, and we need 4 or less. And the result is a 2, and that is a hit. And we can pick the unit to be destroyed, and it will be the anti-aircraft unit. And the Heinkel returns to base. Now we proceed to resolve the air attacks against the New Zealander unit in the town of Malemi. We start with the Junkers 87 Stuka. We need 3 or less. And the roll is a 6, and the attack of the Stuka fails, and it takes a hit. And the Stuka returns to base. Following up on the attack, we have another Stuka assigned, and we need a 3 or less. So we roll for the Stuka, and that's another 6. It misses and suffers a hit. The Stuka is reduced. So those New Zealanders are happy to be alive, and man, they have the best anti-aircraft gunner of the war down there somewhere. Now we move on to Kanea. We have Junkers 87 Stuka unit about to attack there. We need 3 or less. And the roll is a 3, a hit, and we will destroy the British unit with a combat strength of 3. Now to the last tactical attack, we have another Stuka attacking Suda port, and we need a 3 or less. And a 3 it is, a hit, and Stuka destroys the 16th Australian Battalion. And that's the end of the German tactical air attack phase. And now all air units return to base. The Germans, during this phase, caused the destruction of 4 Allied units for 4 victory points, and they suffered losses of 2 Stuka units being reduced. We had already reduced the Italian bomber, for a net gain of 2 victory points. So the victory point score increases from 8 now to 10. Now to the next phase, the German airdrop and landing phase, and now we land all our units that are conducting airborne drops, and for each one we have to roll 1d6 and consult the airborne drop table. And we will start to resolve the airdrops for our units that are landing at Prison Valley, which is a plain space. And as we see here, on a 1, our unit scatters, and we have to find out where it actually drops in an adjacent zone. On a 2, it is reduced, and 3 or more it lands. Now, we can reduce the possibility of a scatter result by spending 1 Flieger Corps point for a +1 die roll modifier on the airborne unit drop table. And we do so, and we still have 5 points left. And that +1 applies to all 4 of these airdrop attempts. Actually 5, because the layer has 2 units. And so we have a +1. On a roll of 1, the final die roll will be a 2. It will be reduced. And any roll of 2 or higher will be a successful land result. So we start rolling first for this air transport and unit. We roll 1d6, a 2 modified to a 3, and the airborne unit drops safely at Prison Valley. Now we roll for this transport unit here We roll 1d6, a 6 modified to a 7, and the Sturm Regiment's headquarters successfully airdrops at Prison Valley. Now we move on to the next unit before rolling for the lair unit. We roll 1d6, a 3 modified to a 4, and this airborne artillery support unit drops successfully also at Prison Valley. And finally, we have 2 die rolls for the 2 units that are being transported by the lair unit, which represents gliders. So we eliminate the lair unit after this die roll. A 2 and a 6, so both units airdrop successfully at Prison Valley. Now we resolve the airdrop for the unit that is scheduled to land at Cania, and we will not employ a Flieger Corps point, so we roll 1d6. The result is a 6, and the battalion from the Sturm Regiment airdrops successfully at Cania. And now finally we go to the airdrops at Malemi Airfield. Because of the importance of these airdrops, we will spend another Flieger Corps staff point here, and now we have 3 left. So we have 2 units airdropping there. Let's roll first for the unit to the left, and we have a +1. 5 + 1, 6. And the support unit, this anti-tank battalion, successfully airdrops at Malemi Airfield. Now the remaining transported unit, another 5 modified to a 6, and the battalion of engineers successfully lands at Malemi Airfield. And that concludes the airdrops for this turn. And we place the transport units here at the Luftwaffe available units in Greece. Note that the lair unit that is used up because it represents gliders does not count as an eliminated unit for victory point purposes. It is just simply removed from the game. Now we move to the next phase, and the next phase is the German ground combat phase. And we have combat situations at Malemi Airfield, the port of Cania, and also at Prison Valley. Now, before we start resolving any ground combat, let's talk a little bit about tactical edge, because this is everything in the combat system of this game. Combat in this game is not simultaneous. Whoever gains the tactical edge fires first, and casualties are deducted by the receiving side, and then that side fires, of course, if they have anything left with which to fire. And there are certain circumstances that give the Allies and the Germans a +1 die roll modifier in the tactical edge die roll. And we see it here. If, for example, there's at least 1 German unit participating in combat that was dropped by parachute in that turn, there's a +1 for the Allies, and that also applies if there's an airborne landing unit or amphibious unit of the Germans participating in that combat. Also, the Allies get a +1 if their command level is high. The Germans get a +1 if the Allies' command level is low, and each of the sides gets a +1 if they have at least 1 elite unit participating. And finally, if the Germans spend 1 Flieger Corps staff point, they also get a +1. And during this playthrough, you will see that we will use these markers to denote each of the sides' tactical edge die roll modifiers. So we have 3 combat situations at Malemi Airfield, Prison Valley, and Cania. And we still have 3 Flieger Corps staff points available. So we will begin by resolving the combat at Prison Valley. The Allied command level is high, so that's a +1, and at least one of the German units, in fact all of them, were airdropped. So the Allies have a +2 die roll modifier. The Germans have an elite unit, that's a +1, and no other modifier unless we spend a Flieger Corps staff point. And we will spend one right now. And we have 2 left. So the Germans also have a +2. Now we roll 1d6 for each side. The highest modified number wins the tactical edge and will fire first. And if there is a tie, depending on the type of terrain, either the attacker or defender will have the tactical edge. So we roll 1d6. The Allies have a total of 7, and the Germans, not even close, 3. So the Allies have the tactical advantage and they will fire first. And even though the Allies have the tactical edge, always the support units fire first. There's no support units on the Allies side. So the German support unit, which is the airborne artillery unit, fires first, and with a 4 or less, it will destroy the British unit. The roll is a 2, so the British are eliminated. And because the Germans attacked and won this combat, they can execute a pursuit option with their maneuver units, which are their non-support units, in which case it would be all the units that are in Prison Valley except the artillery. And units executing a pursuit can move 1 zone. So we have 2 parachute battalions moving into Malemi town, and that will force the 21st New Zealander Infantry Battalion to execute a counterattack in the upcoming counterattack phase. The headquarters and artillery unit remain at Prison Valley, and 1 elite parachute battalion takes control of the White Mountains. Now to the next combat, where we have in Kania 1 German parachute battalion facing off against 2 Allied units. Let's take a look at the tactical edge determination. The Allies have a +2 because the Allied command level is high, and that parachute unit was airdropped this turn. And we will spend another Flieger Corps staff point to give our parachute unit a +1. So each side has a +2. Now we roll 1d6. And this time we win, and we have the tactical edge, 6 to 5. So we fire with our airborne unit, and we need less than 4 for a hit. And if we roll 4, which is equal to the unit's combat factor, we have to check the result on the combat results table. And the roll is a 3, a hit. So we choose and we eliminate the 7th Greek Infantry Regiment. Now the Greek partisans get a chance to fire back, but they need a 1. And the roll is a 2, so they do not cause a hit. And both units remain in Kania. Now to the last combat situation of this phase, which is the most interesting one, where the fate of King George I of Greece is dependent upon. If he is captured, that's 10 victory points. But this will not be easy because King George is an elite unit. So they get a +1 because of elite status of one of their units, +1 because the Allied command level is high, and +1 because the Germans that are attacking were airdropped, for a total of +3. And we will spend our last Flieger Corps staff point. And on account of that staff point plus 1 elite unit that we have, the most we can muster is a +2. So now we roll 1d6 for each of the sides. And we rolled a 3 for a total of 5, and the Allies a 1 for a total of 4, so we get the tactical advantage. And support units fire first, so we fire our anti-tank unit. We need 2 or less. The roll is a 4, and that's a miss. Now the Allied artillery unit fires and needs 4 or less. The artillery rolls a 3 and scores a hit, so we have to reduce one of our units. And we flip our anti-tank unit. Now we go to the portion of the combat with the maneuver units, and since we won the tactical edge determination, we fire first. And we roll 1d6 for our engineer battalion. The roll is a 3, equal to its combat factor, so we have to consult the combat results table. And because this is a ground unit versus ground unit combat, the result equal to the combat factor forces the defender to retreat. So we can choose to retreat one unit, and that will not cause the capture of George I. His unit has to be eliminated. So he will be out of Crete after this combat phase, and we won't have that chance again. So we will retreat the artillery unit to the adjacent space of Kisamos. And now the Allies fire back with the British infantry and the King George unit. And they both miss. So the battle rages on at Malemi airfield, but we can bring units, air landing units in the next turn there, because we only have to have a foothold on one airfield. It is now the end of the combat phase, so King George I of Greece escapes from Crete. This combat phase saw the destruction of 2 Allied units for +2 victory points, but the reduction of one of our airborne units for -2. Therefore, the victory point total stays at 10. Now we proceed to the next phase, Allied Middle East command phase. The command level is at 10. That is high, so there's going to be 3 command checks, 3 die rolls made on the Allied Middle East command table. So we roll 2 d6s, and the first of the die rolls is a 12. RAF raids Luftwaffe airfields. We roll 1 die, and we have to reduce that number of German air units in the available box. That cannot be good. So we roll 1 d6 and a 2, which is not too bad. So we will reduce 1 Me-109 and 1 Me-110 unit. And of course, that was just the first die roll on the Middle East Command events table. We have 2 more left. So we roll 2 d6 once again. And now we get an 11, Ultra Intelligence. Raise both the Allied command level and Royal Navy levels by 1 each. So the Allied command level goes up to 11, and the Royal Navy is now at 7. Still have 1 more nefarious die roll to make here. So we roll 2 d6 and another 11. Fortunately, each event can only be implemented once per turn. So this second Ultra Intelligence event is ignored. Now we move on to the next phase, and it is the Allied counterattack phase. And now in this Allied counterattack phase, there will be 3 combat situations: Malemi Airfield, Malemi Town, and Kania, and we ran out of Flieger Corps staff points, so the Allies will have the tactical edge, most probably, in all of these 3 battles. And in regards to tactical edge, the Allies get a +2 die roll modifier because their morale or Allied command level is high and our units were airdropped. We only get a +1 because of the elite status of the engineers. And clearly the Allies have won the tactical edge. But because the Allies have no support units, our reduced support unit with a strength of 1, which is not very hopeful, gets to fire first. If we roll a 1, the British unit will be destroyed. Not even close. Now the maneuver units fire, starting with the British, and they need 2 or less. The British miss. And now our engineers fire back, 3 or less. And this is another 4, so that's also a miss. So those units stay locked in combat for now. Now we go to Malemi Town. Here the Allies have a +2, and we don't even have any plus to the die roll because we don't have an elite unit. So we roll 1 d6 for each side to determine tactical edge. And miraculously, we get the tactical edge. So we roll for our 2 units, 4 or less. And these guys are smoking. So the New Zealand battalion is destroyed. And now we move to our last counterattack battle here at Kania between the Greek partisans and one of our parachute battalions. Let's see who wins the tactical edge. The Greek partisans, 5-3. So they fire first. And they need a 1. No, sir. Now we fire back, and we need 4 or less. But we don't fare any better. So that's the end of that counterattack. And the end of the counterattack phase, with 2 of the zones still with units of both sides. The elimination of the New Zealander battalion increases our victory point score to 11. Now to the next phase, and this is the Allied Command Adjustment phase. The Allies still control all the ports in this game, so they only need control of 1 to increase the Allied command back to 12. Now to the next phase, and this is the Allied evacuation phase. We determine if evacuation occurs, but it's not even worth rolling for because the die roll has to be higher than the Allied command level, and that's impossible with 2 dice because the command level is at 12. So we practically skip this phase and we go to the next phase. And the next phase is the Allied evacuation execution. Since there's no evacuation, we also ignore this phase, and we finally reach the end of turn phase. And we're in turn 2, so we advance the turn marker to turn number 3. And at the conclusion of turn 2, we see that our paratroopers have taken control of Prison Valley, the White Mountains, and we have a foothold on Malemi Airfield. So we can try to bring our mountain troops through that airfield in the next turn. Our losses in terms of paratroops has been light so far. But we can't say the same about our air forces. We have 5 reduced units, and if we want to refit them all, we would have to spend 5 Flieger Corps points, and there's no guarantee that we will receive even close to that amount in the next turn. Still have considerable forces in Greece, the 3rd Regiment of the 7th Airborne Division, as well as the entire 5th Mountain Division that we can start now transporting and air landing at Malemi Airfield. And before I leave, I just want to announce that I have uploaded the images for these, let's call them sequence of play cards for this game. They will be available, they should be available by now, at BGG's file page for this game. I find it a very, very helpful tool for a game like this that has 19 separate and distinct phases. And also in the same file with the cards, you will find this 1-page sequence of play list that has all 19 phases, and which is helpful so that when you're flipping the cards and playing each one of the phases, you know which phases are coming up next and you can plan accordingly. And I have to be honest with you folks, after I printed this reminded me of somebody very special to wargaming. For me, one of the greatest graphic artists ever, Redmond Simonson. It has that simplicity, but yet that elegance that distinguished his work. And when you look at his games, even today, they look just incredibly functional and at the same time beautiful. So, this is my little tribute to Mr. Simonson, and you can get this also with the cards. And I recommend that if you're going to use the cards, also use this list. And that is the end of this second turn. So, this is Stuka Joe, signing off for now. Thanks for watching.